Hello and welcome to today's video where I'm going to try and finish this extract from chapter 1 in under 10 minutes because that's what you requested, and we're looking at quotation number 8 here. I never saw a circle of such hateful faces, and there was the man in the middle with a kind of black sneering coldness, frightened too, I could see that, but carrying it off, sir, really like Satan. And let's jump in with the script. Enfield's portrayal of Hyde as Satan is usually used to show this as a proxy for Stevenson's view of Hyde's monstrous evil. However, as we have seen, Stevenson's symbolism is far more subtle than this. This satanic simile is actually just juxtaposed with its opposite. Hyde is actually frightened too, not satanic at all. Indeed, what Enfield most objects to is his bravery when surrounded by the mob. Hyde responds by remaining cool with black sneering coolness, and this could be heroic without the description of his coolness as being black. So as usual, I've put in bold the words that will be relevant to any essay that you write, but I'm not going to take you through all of them. You should use this one though, a proxy. That means stands for. So Enfield stands for Stevenson's view. Okay, it's a really useful word that you will be able to use whatever literature text you're writing about. But the crucial word here is actually however, because as you're getting used to by now, once you start looking at more than one point of view, you're evaluating, and that's always at the top of the mark scheme. Let's look at the rest of the interpretation. It was common to see black as symbolic of evil. However, as we shall see later, it is also an allusion to Hyde's skin colour. We might suppose the 1880s are too early in British history for Stevenson to be accusing middle-class London of being, that should be, a racist society. Yet, from 1889 to 1893, Stevenson travelled extensively in Hawaii and Samoa, staying with a king whose daughter had married a Scotsman. He also spent much time helping in a leper colony. We can infer from this that Stevenson treated all people the same, regardless of class and race, and that he favoured the underdog, wishing to relieve the disadvantaged. The use of black might not suggest evil to Stevenson himself, and he may be using it to suggest the racist attitude of Enfield and the society he represents. So this is a really subtle point here, which you'll pick up as you read the rest of the novel and see how often Hyde's skin colour is referred to. It also suggests that he wants the reader to feel sympathy for the underdog, Hyde. So what you should notice here is how I've tried to integrate my knowledge about the context into my answer. Although I'm teaching you with this, you wouldn't actually write as much context as this in your essay. You would just say that he had travelled in Hawaii and Samoa, meeting people of all races and helping in a leper colony. You do it much more quickly. So back in bold go the words that you can use whatever the essay. Again, notice, however, different interpretations coming in examiner, give me the marks. I also want to give you this unusual interpretation that you probably have not studied in class, but you might find more evidence for this as you go through my videos. Well, if you go through my videos, you will. It also suggests that he wants the reader to feel sympathy for the underdog Hyde. Most people don't subscribe to that view, and therefore it's a more sophisticated one for you to prove in front of the examiner. Here is quotation number 9. If you choose to make capital out of this accident, said he, I am naturally helpless. No gentleman but wishes to avoid a scene, says he. Name your figure. Remember, each character is a construct, so Stevenson makes Hyde refer to himself as a gentleman and to speak with the highly educated vocabulary of a gentleman before we ever find out he is Jekyll. He wants us to understand that Hyde represents all gentlemen because he wants to expose their corruption in Victorian society. So right from our first meeting, he sounds like a gentleman because he represents their corruption, and that will be relevant to every single essay you write. And hopefully you've spotted it's that final sentence which you will be able to reproduce every time you write an essay about Stevenson's intentions or about Hyde. Quotation number 10. Well, we screwed him up to £100 for the child's family. He would have clearly liked to stick it out, but there was something about the lot of us that meant mischief, and at last he struck. Stevenson's language choice is an attack on the capitalist system that creates these Victorian gentlemen. Consequently, Hyde refers to Enfield's making capital, hence the link to capitalism. He's being really explicit here. He follows this up with Enfield's own words, "We screwed him," boasting that they exploited Hyde's helplessness. Stevenson highlights how this capitalist exploitation is far worse than Hyde's evil at this stage in the novella. Okay, well, hopefully you're getting quite good at this now, and you've spotted which part of that analysis will be useful for you in showing the examiner you're thinking more deeply than other candidates. And just in case you hadn't done so, there it is highlighted for you in bold. And welcome to quotation number 11. The next thing was to get the money, and where do you think he carried us but to the place with the door, whipped out a key, went in, and presently came back with the matter of £10 in gold and a cheque for the balance on counts, drawn payable to bearer, and signed with a name that I can't mention, though it's one of the points of my story. But it was a name at least very well known and often printed. So let's see how this is a continued attack on the capitalist system. Stevenson is very explicit in his attack on the capitalist system. Consequently, he chooses that Jekyll should bank at Coutts, the most famous bank in London. He has Enfield inform us that Jekyll is also famous in London, frequently reported on by the printed press for his good deeds. This links Jekyll to Stevenson's main theme of the hypocrisy and corruption of middle-class men. He also illustrates this with Enfield's discretion at not naming Jekyll. Although this at first seems noble, we soon discover this is a cover-up. And the reason that's going to be so important is Utterson is going to be covering up the connection between Jekyll and Hyde, even when Hyde has committed murder and killed Sir Danvers Carew. So we can see this idea of corruption through cover-up introduced this early on in chapter 1. So hopefully you've spotted what the key phrase in here is that you will be able to use no matter what your essay. It will fit every single topic. And in case you didn't, here it is in bold. And so the 11 quotations I've given you in these videos come from an extract that will be the size, the type of size you'd get in the exam. This next bit here I'm not going to read to you, but it gets us to the next part. You wouldn't get an extract this long in the exam. So here is the next part. "I see you feel as I do," said Mr. Enfield. "Yes, it is a bad story. For my man was a fellow that nobody could have to do with, a really damnable man. And the person that drew the cheque is the very pink of the proprieties, celebrated too, and what makes it worse, one of your fellows who do what they call good. Blackmail, I suppose. An honest man paying through the nose for some of the capers of his youth." At this stage, this discretion seems noble as Enfield protects Jekyll's identity, believing he's the victim of blackmail. Moreover, he implies that it will be for something Jekyll did in his youth. However, there I am again signposted to the examiner that I'm looking at more than one interpretation, therefore evaluating, put my marks up. This is exactly the same discretion Utterson will show when he fails to tell the police about Jekyll's connection with Hyde, even when Hyde is known to be a murderer, as we discussed earlier. When we look at this more closely, we also see the assumption that all such gentlemen have committed crimes in their youth, for which they could be blackmailed. He implies that they have simply escaped any blame because of their class and wealth. His reference to these crimes light-heartedly as capers shows how he feels that they should feel no guilt over these. So again, if the main theme is the corruption of middle-class men, which bit of that should you commit to memory to use in any essay? Hopefully you spotted it as that final paragraph. Well, nearly an epic fail. This is 10 minutes and 4 seconds, and this is my last slide. Damn it. I'll rush it. Stevenson again uses irony through Enfield's description of Hyde as a really damnable man who they have just extorted for close on £100. Enfield and the doctor's crime is far worse than Hyde. The worst that can be said of him is that he did not stop when a young girl unexpectedly ran into him and fell over. Even if she had fallen exactly in his path, only one footstep would have stood on her. Hyde is small, and Enfield tells us she was not much the worse for it. Stevenson wants us to see Enfield's reaction as both disproportionate and unfair. This again shows how he's on the side of Hyde here. He wants us to be sympathetic towards him, and Enfield's view is biased. So finally, Stevenson highlights Enfield's unfairness in this repetition of the word really, which Enfield also used to compare Hyde to Satan. When we keep emphasizing something is definitely true, it's often because it is false and we fear being exposed. And Stevenson wishes to expose this as a biased and hypocritical view. Well, nearly made it. Hope you find that really useful. All this scripted writing that I've given you is enough to get you easily into the grade 9, and you've seen how to apply something from the passage to the context, and in later videos I'll show you how to apply it to quotations from the rest of the novel. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll make it shorter next time.